Hello, we're back here for our Family Friday at First Baptist Church in Bonham, Texas. I'm Chase. If you haven't joined us before, I want to issue you a welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I want you to ask you to do a favor. I ask you to do this each time, but it's super helpful to us. If you would, you happen to be watching, whether you're watching live right now or you watch the video later, if you would just go and share this video with other people. Usually at the bottom of your screen, under the video, there's a button to share. Also on the post, if you watch it later, you'll also see that you can share it there. So I want to thank you again for joining us today. As we draw close to Thanksgiving, you knew it was probably going to happen. We were going to talk about gratitude. And so today that's what I want to talk about, especially in the lives of families. And so I want us to think about, what does it look like for us to be grateful? How do we cultivate gratitude in our hearts, especially in the midst of families? Now, I think we all know that we want to be acknowledged for the things that we do that are good, that people should appreciate. We especially want this for our kids. We want our kids to tell other people thank you, because we understand all that we do and all that other people do to make their lives good and better. And ingratitude is actually the default state, I think, of the human heart. The Scripture speaks about in several places that God's will for us is that we give thanks in all things, but that an evidence of our rebellion against Him is actually that we are unthankful to Him and to others as well. Now, this shows up in a lot of ways, practically speaking. One is usually just lack of expression. We don't tell people thank you. We don't express the gratitude in our hearts for what the Lord gives to us. Sometimes it shows up in selfish actions. Sometimes it shows up, especially in my family with our kids, with the phrase, "That's not fair," right? I didn't get what they got, and so I'm ungrateful for what I do have. So perhaps it's whininess or discontentment. Well, there's a lot of different ways that ingratitude shows up. So I want to give you 4 key thoughts here about gratitude, and then a few ways that I think we can cultivate it. So the first thing is, as I said, that gratitude is something that we must fight for. Because ingratitude is the default state of our human heart, gratitude is something that must be fought for. It's something that we must pursue with diligence and effort, and it's not something that we're just going to drift into. And that same is true in our marriages and our kids. With our kids, we're not just going to automatically be grateful to our wives for the things that they do for us. Our kids aren't automatically going to be grateful to us for the things that we provide for them. It's something that we must fight for and pursue with diligence. Otherwise, we might miss it because we're not going to drift into it. The second thing I want to say to you today is that gratitude is something that is not merely taught, it has to be cultivated. And I use that word on purpose because we think of cultivation mostly in agricultural terms, or something that has to be grown and built over time. And so this means a couple things. One, that it does take time to actually build gratitude in our hearts, in the hearts of our wives or our families or our husbands. If you're a wife, whatever relationships you have, those things have to be built and cultivated over time. It also means that it's not easy to do. Like many things in our lives, especially in our Christian lives, gratitude is not something that we're just going to automatically wake up one day and have. It has to be built, and it takes time and effort to build that. The third thing I want to tell you about gratitude is this. Gratitude is something that is usually modeled before it is able to be built. So if we want our kids, if we want our wives, if we want other relationships to be imbued with gratitude in them, then we must model it for ourselves, right? We must show gratitude to other people. The last thing I want to show you, or to talk to you about today about gratitude, is that it's built on one central key truth, and that's simply this. I have nothing that I have not first received from the Lord, or from other people. So everything that I have is a stewardship. Everything that I have has been given to me in some way, form, or fashion. And we may initially buck against that and say, well, hold on a second. I've worked for this, or I've worked for that. But even our existence, right, is built on the graciousness of God to bring us into existence. He's not obligated to do that, nor to give us the health or the mental acuity or the physical skills to pursue anything that we pursue in life. And so everything that we have, my very existence is built right on having received something from the hand of the Lord. And so these four aspects of gratitude, I think, are kind of the foundational pieces that we begin to use to build gratitude in our hearts and in our lives. So those are the four things, just a simple review. Gratitude is something that must fight for, it's something that must be cultivated, something that we must model, and then certainly something that is built on this idea of everything that we have received from someone else, most particularly the Lord. So I want to give you a few things that I think we can do to cultivate gratitude in our hearts, whether it's in our children or towards our spouses, whatever that may be. The very first thing is simply this: in order to be grateful, I must first squash any pride that I have. Right? When we look, for instance, at Romans 1, and we see that one of the main things that God indicts humankind for is that we aren't thankful, that we know Him. He's evident from the world in which we live, from the conscience that we have, from any number of things. His invisible attributes are known to us, and yet we don't show thanks. We don't appreciate the fact that He has created the world and placed us in it and given us many good things to enjoy. And so this comes from the fact that we are prideful, that we want to set ourselves up as the highest authority. And so in order to begin to be grateful, to model that for our wives, for our spouses, for our children, for all of our other relationships, we must begin simply by squashing any pride. I have nothing for which I can lay claim, and everything I have, as I said, has been first received. The second thing I think is this: prayer, right? The whole point of prayer is to lead me to dependence, right? I must confess, if I pray properly, that everything I have is the Lord's first, and I need Him in every single aspect and in every single way. And so prayer, the very practice of prayer itself, is actually forcing me into a state of gratitude. Now, of course, I can pray improperly and miss what I should be doing, and exalt myself even in those times. But if I truly come humbly, as I said, before the Lord in prayer, then it will help build and cultivate that gratitude in my heart. I think one of the best ways that we can learn to be grateful is to actually become more aware of the blessings that we have. We often say things like, count your blessings one by one. And I do think that there is a sense of which that is very appropriate. We have to become more aware of the ways in which we have been blessed in order to build a sense of thankfulness. I think this is especially true for husbands and wives. A lot of times I'll come home and I won't notice something small, or it's really not small, but in the grand scheme of things, sometimes it seems small, that Melissa has done. Maybe she's spent all day cleaning the house, and I'm more worried about getting home from work or whatever. I don't realize that she's put a lot of time and a lot of effort into something, and maybe if I don't notice, then I'm not grateful for that, and then of course that can sometimes create conflict or a feeling of neglect or whatever it is. And so I have to learn to be aware of the ways in which I'm being blessed in order to express gratitude as I should. The same thing with our kids, right? Until they become aware of the ways in which they're being blessed, then certainly it's hard. And one of the things I think you can do with your children to help in this is sometimes to withhold things in order to help them see the importance of those things. Now, certainly I don't mean that you withhold anything necessary, but sometimes, for instance, it's important to withhold something in order to build an awareness that that thing really is important and should be something that we're grateful for. Certainly, if there is the presence of ingratitude, then that needs to be confronted with compassion and gentleness, but still with clarity about some things are just not right. You have to remind your kids, say thank you. So-and-so did something for you. Make sure you say thank you. Write a thank you note, whatever it is. And so we do have to often have that reminder, that confrontation, that gentle prod to force us into that. Certainly with kids and others as well, sharing is one of the great ways of learning gratitude, of cultivating it in our lives, of having to share something. This is one of the reasons that we do, for instance, like right now, Operation Christmas Child Box, is because it forces our children and ourselves to think about other people, about how we can bless them through what the Lord has given us. That makes us more grateful, and we share with other people in need. So as I said, this is not really just a kid problem, it's a human problem, right? The ingratitude of our hearts is something that is endemic to every single human being. And so we want to learn to be more grateful. And so this really is something that begins with us. If we want grateful kids, we have to have a grateful heart. If we want grateful spouses, then we have to have a grateful heart. And so we just need to work on that. I just saw that Hannah, she's watching live, and so she posted on here that kids just don't hide it as well. And I think that's absolutely true, that as adults, we just learn to hide our ingratitude a little bit better, or we express it in acceptable ways, whereas kids just put it all out there. And so we definitely need to do that. All right, I'm going to try to take a moment here to look through a couple of the comments and see some of the things that you guys put. I told you a few times that I was going to do this. I appreciate everybody that did share, and so I appreciate that. So it looks like a lot of these are expressions of some of the things that we're talking about. Yeah, gratitude even when things don't go your way. I think these are definitely pride is sneaky. These are all great thoughts and good things that are actually true, right? That we must learn to examine these things in our hearts and in our lives. All right, well, remember that you can still comment and we can interact even after the live video is done. I do hope, again, that if you're watching, that you'll share, even if you're watching later and you haven't watched live, you can still share that for us. If you happen to be a visitor and you watch today, we do want to invite you to come to church with us this Sunday. We have Sunday school that starts at 9:30, as well as corporate worship 10:45. If you have any questions about any of those things, you can always visit our website at fbcbonham.com, and that will definitely give you lots of information about visiting our church and finding out what important activities and things that we have. I also want to issue a special invite to all of our Christmas activities. We're going to be going through the 4 aspects of Advent this year and doing some special things associated with that. You're going to see a little video about that later on pop up on our Facebook page, so be watching for that. In the meantime, I hope the Lord blesses you and keeps you, and we'll see you again next time.